Okay, and you probably will get a box that pops up that says the meeting's being live streamed. Make sure you click got it. If you don't, you'll be booted out of the meeting. I've learned that the hard way. Okay, well, good morning, everybody. It's good to see everybody, even though it's in a little video box. It is, I don't have the exact time, is 10:15. So let's get the meeting started. Our apologies. We did have a technical issue with one person's login, and it's a mystery to all of us why that happened, but it got sorted out. So fortunately, we are all here, and I'll call the meeting to order at 10:15. Today, the 28th Judicial District Nominating Commission is meeting to interview and select nominees to fill the vacancy for District Court Judge upon the retirement of Honorable Patrick Thompson in June of this year. I don't know if Mr. Judge Thompson is watching or if word will get back to him, but on behalf of the judicial branch, I really want to thank him for his years of service, his commitment to the district, and his support of the citizens throughout the district. It's always a little bit of a bittersweet feeling going through these because, a quality judge with years of experience is hanging up their hat. But that's the reality of it, and we really appreciate all of your service. Marcia, do you want to go ahead and officially do the roll call?
Yes. Lance Cochran.
Here.
Robert German.
Present.
Peter Johnston.
Here.
Jay Macy.
Present.
Don Merriam.
Here.
David Stanley.
Here.
Christine Ritter.
Here.
And Robert Martin.
Present.
That's everyone.
Thank you, Marcia. That gives us a quorum, in fact, unanimity among the members of the commission. So I'll declare the meeting a quorum. And I'll introduce myself briefly. My name is Justice KJ Wall, and I am a member of the Kansas Supreme Court. I am the departmental justice for Department 1, which includes the 28th Judicial District. And as a result, I am the non-voting chair of this nominating commission. With me today is Marcia Johnson, my judicial executive assistant. Could be better known as a savior and keeps everybody organized and things on track. And we would still be working to start the meeting without her. So I think you all know Marcia by now, at least via correspondence on email. So thank you, Marcia. Winnie is also, you won't see her name, but she's also our IT support and helping this Zoom meeting run smoothly. I'd like to welcome also Mr. Don Merriman, to the commission.
Thank you.
Mr. Merriman, you replaced Daryl Wilson, who resigned in the not too recent past. Everybody may already know you, Mr. Merriman, but just for members of the public and for those who may not, do you want to just introduce yourself briefly, who you are, what you do?
Sure will. Lifelong resident of Saline County and Salina. I went to school here and went to Kansas Wesleyan. My first part of my career, I worked at Salina Supply Company as a heating and cooling specialist, designing heating and cooling products. Decided to have a major change in career, and I joined up with the county clerk's office here in Salina and ran for clerk in the year 2000 and ran 3 more times actually. And so I have a 17-year career in the county clerk's office and county election officer. So when the opportunity came along to be appointed this commission, I was very familiar with it, obviously, and I was jumped at the chance. So I'm glad to be with everybody.
Thank you. It is great to have you on board, and nothing like jumping in and getting started with a nomination process. So
Right.
Welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Just as a reminder, today's meeting is open to the public under the Kansas Open Meetings Act. notice of the meeting was provided, and the notice included instructions for the public to attend by phone for public comment and to watch the proceedings live via YouTube. That's all for item 1 on our agenda. We can move to the second item, which is review and approval of the minutes from the last meeting on February 8th, 2022. Everyone, I believe, should have received a copy of the draft minutes from that meeting in February. Does anyone have any proposed edits or changes?
Justice, I understand from Ms. Johnson that she made a couple of corrections to my minutes. I'm not totally sure if that went out to the full commission. They were relatively minor, although I had I think, spelled your initials. So there's a period after the K and a period after the J. And Ms. Johnson also corrected my spelling in YouTube. So that's it. Otherwise, they are as submitted.
That's why I love having Marcia around to review all draft opinions for things like that. But I appreciate your work, Mr. Johnson, creating those minutes, because it can be a bit of a labor. So it sounds like everybody has received those modified minutes. I'm not hearing any further comments. Does anybody have a motion to approve the minutes?
Mr. Justice, this is Bob German. I will so move.
Is there a second?
Second.
That Mr. Martin?
Yes.
Okay. All in favor, signify by raising your hand, I guess might be the easiest way to do that. All right. Anyone opposed? It looks like I saw all hands up. So that motion carries and the minutes are approved. And we'll move to item 3, public comment. At this time, we open the meeting up for public comment. Is there any member of the public on the phone who wishes to make comment to the commission? I'm hearing none. So we can move to our next agenda item. Item 4, we're extremely happy to have the Chief District Judge of the 28th Judicial District with us today, Chief Judge Young. She's served as the Chief Judge of the 28th Judicial District for about 7 years now. Is that it?
I believe so.
Yeah.
7 to 8, something like that.
7 to 8, and you've been on the bench since 2006, so for quite a bit longer than that. Obviously, in this capacity as Chief Judge, she's responsible for the judicial administration and assignments for judges throughout the judicial district in Saline and Ottawa County, and she oversees all judicial officers. And as a result, she's in a great position to understand what it takes to be a successful district court judge and the essential functions of the position, the skills and attributes that make a good district court judge. And so we wanted to turn the floor over to the chief for a few moments for her to give us some background and information on the position and her comments on this process. So with that, Chief Young, the floor is yours.
Thank you. And good morning, Justice Wall and commission members. As many of you know, in the 28th Judicial District, we currently have 4 district judges and an Ottawa County magistrate, and all of the judges do preside over cases both in Saline and Ottawa counties. With Judge Thompson's retirement, we will be losing a judge with a great deal of experience and wisdom, and I know that we judges are going to greatly miss him. Currently, we have 3 of the 4 district judges who preside over criminal cases, and we have one judge, Judge Hickman, who presides over the civil and domestic cases. And I was asked today to comment on the essential functions and responsibilities of a district court judge. And these include presiding over a variety of criminal cases, from the first appearance through the jury trial and sentencing. The judge would also be presiding over the preliminary hearing and a variety of pretrial motions before the case gets to jury trial. The cases that we hear range from misdemeanor and property cases to murder, robbery, burglaries, sex offenses, and drug offenses. Also, as to criminal cases, the district judge would be issuing arrest warrants, setting bonds, and entering no contact orders for alleged victims. The district judges also regularly conduct hearings on motions to revoke probations. Probation, we have quite a few of those. The district judges are on call overnight during the week and on weekends every fourth week to review affidavits for search warrants and signed search warrants. We are also contacted on weekends from time to time to set bond. The district judges also preside over a variety of civil and domestic matters, including divorce, child custody, child support, adoptions, protective orders, the civil sexual predator docket, and hear claims of ineffective assistance of counsel from criminal cases. Some of the traits that I believe are important for this position, in addition to the ability to analyze legal issues, are integrity, impartiality, patience, the ability to handle pressure, punctuality, and diligence. And I did receive a call this morning that Brock Abbey was no longer, had withdrawn his name from consideration. So I know you only have 4 candidates to interview this morning, but I am pleased with the candidates that did apply for this position. And lastly, I would like to thank each of you on the commission for your time and service here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Judge Young. I was just curious, do you know off the top of your head sort of the caseload, how it breaks down between criminal versus civil matters in the 28th, or rough estimate or ballpark?
Well, we have, so 3 of the judges do the criminal cases. So the vast majority of our cases, or the cases that probably maybe take the most time, are the criminal cases. That's why we have 3 judges that preside over the criminal and 1 that presides over the domestic and the civil is how we do it.
Great. Are there any other questions for Chief Judge Young? Well, thank you for that background information. And I think that's great information for us to keep fresh in our mind as we're interviewing the candidates. And we will cut you loose and free at this point, Chief, and let you enjoy on YouTube watching that interview process from here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And yes, I did mean to mention and was going to, at the conclusion of Chief Judge Young's presentation, that we did receive this morning formal notice from Mr. Abbey that he has withdrawn his application for district court judge. So that leaves us with 4 nominations, or 4 applicants for the district court judge position. I think at this point, before the commission, before we kick off the actual interviews, I'd recommend that we go into executive session for 5 minutes or 10 minutes, whatever you think might be more prudent, to just review the confidential background information that we received from nominees. If you are in agreement with that, if you want to go into executive session to discuss those background checks, just need to entertain a motion to do so.
Judge, this is Lance Cochran. I make a motion that we go into executive session for 5 minutes to discuss the confidential background information.
This is Don Merriman. I second.
Okay, any further discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all in favor, signify by raising your hand. Looks like we have a unanimous motion that we will go into executive session. The way that works in the virtual world is Marcia is going to put us into a breakout room. I guess it's sort of feels like Star Trek, like we're being beamed somewhere else in the ether here, but we'll do that, and that will put us into a confidential group setting. You may have to click join. All right, we are back out of executive session, but maybe not finished with our review of the confidential background information. May need a little bit more time to get through all of that because the members of the commission have done a lot of hard work, interviewed a lot of folks, and checked a lot of references. So unless I've misread the room here, is there a motion to return to executive session for maybe 10 minutes?
Your Honor, I move to return to executive session for 10 minutes.
Your Honor, I
Second
would
that.
Is that, did you get that, Marcia? Was that Mr. German that seconded that? Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by raising your hand. And that's everybody. So Marcia, it went so smooth last time, we're going to do it again for a little bit longer. Welcome back, everybody. We are out of executive session and returning to the public meeting. And we, I believe, are ready to proceed with the next item on the agenda, which is the interviews. Unless, yeah, I think after the interviews, then before we do voting, we'll then decide how we want to do the voting process and how we're going to report that. But I think that it makes more sense to do that after we actually conduct the interviews. So I believe we are ready to proceed. And as we mentioned earlier, Mr. Abbey has withdrawn his application, which in alphabetical order, we are turning to Mr. Hoffman, Patrick Hoffman.
So I will admit Mr. Hoffman.
Thank you, Marcia. Hello, Mr. Hoffman. How are you?
I'm good. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Everybody
Excellent.
else hear Mr. Hoffman okay?
Yes.
Yeah. Seeing a bunch of nods. Okay. Thank you. The light in the background kind of hides your face a little bit, but
I can adjust some things.
it's
Is that better or worse for you guys?
I think that's getting better.
Sorry, I'm not usually in the, here we go. In my screen, I look better, or I guess more visible. Is that okay?
Marcia, I'm frozen. Oh, there we go. Great. That looks better to me. Thank you, Mr. Hoffman. Welcome. We're beginning the interview portion, and I apologize. I think we contacted you saying that we would start a little bit earlier because we had one of our applicants withdraw. Then we ran into technical issues, of course, and now we're ready for you at your scheduled time. So if you want to, I'll take a minute or two just to provide some opening remarks and comment, and then we'll turn it over to the members of the commission to ask any questions.
Okay, sure. So you want me to open? You want me to?
Yes, sure.
Right?
Do
Yeah.
you have any, if you have opening remarks or comments that if you want to just
sorry.
introduce
Well,
no problem.
my first opening remark, I have to laugh a little bit because one of the, I've had a recurring dream for several days that it would be a problem getting onto the Zoom call, that I would miss the timing or, sleep in like those things are. So this morning is, it's just one of those ironies of life you have to laugh about. I just for a couple minutes, I want to thank you guys. I know that you've had, I'm impressed by how much time and effort has been taken to check references, talk to people. I know that the packet of material that I supplied that you guys have to read is a lot of information. So I do appreciate your guys' time. I know on top of all that, you've had a possibly frustrating morning this morning, getting all the technology issues going. So thank you for doing this. Even lawyers don't really understand what it is you're doing. So it's definitely a thankless task. Briefly for myself, I mean, we can jump into questions. I've got a lot of notes. I'm born and raised in Ellsworth, went to Texas Tech for law school. I'll give you the very brief rundown. Didn't expect to come back to Kansas. Came back because there was an opening in the law firm where in Ellsworth. My father's in that law firm. And so my wife likes to joke with people that I've only misled her about two things in life. One time when I told her I would never go to law school, and one time when I told her we'd never live in Ellsworth. But it all has worked out great. Sherman, Hoffman and Hoffman was a great place for me to grow as a lawyer and be mentored by John Sherman and Greg Hoffman and Carrie Hipp. I had an exposure to a very wide range of cases. A lot of people associate me probably with municipal and transactional law, but the first 7 or 8 years, I was on court-appointed list to get some courtroom experience. I did evictions, I've done collections, I've done guardians ad litem, I've done child in need of care guardian ad litem, I've done involuntary guardianships and conservatorships. So I feel like I have had that, rural Kansas, small firm. We're going to take care of whatever our clients need us to take care of, experience of practicing law. And that's been great. And then just very recently, I got my foot in the door as the Barton County counselor about 3 or 4 years ago, and really have enjoyed that work as probably about 30% of my time. And then this year in 2022, very recently, I was hired by Reno County to be the counselor for them, but I asked to retain Barton. So just in the last few months, I've made a transition where my practice is those two counties, combined population of about 85,000, 90,000 if you put them together, and 600 employees for those two organizations. And it's really great that I have a background in kind of a wide range of law, because county government, in addition to just the county duties and codes and things, we get into employment laws and every manner of real estate issue and collections and contracts. And so it's kind of like taking a general practice experience, and now I'm kind of translating it into government. And then the one other thing, I just want to address real quickly. I have a lot of connections to Salina. I am not currently a resident. My wife and family spend a lot of time going back and forth to Salina. My wife's career or her interests are in the community theater over there, where she teaches classes and is heavily involved. And so we know a lot of people. We have a lot of friends who've been begging us to consider moving. So even though I am an out of area applicant to some extent, we feel like we're very rooted in the community. And I would also say, with my experience as someone who came into Great Bend and Hutchinson as kind of a bit of an outsider, it may be counterintuitive, but that is an excellent way to jump into a new area, especially potentially as a judge, because you don't have any conflicts of interest. You have no preconceived notions of what the local bar is like. You don't really have anything. You have a fresh start with everybody. And it's just a really great way to kind of get going, focused on the practice of law, practiced on what's going on in the courtroom, and not have someone say, I think 10 years ago, that guy did me wrong. So, I think it's actually a really nice way to potentially jump into a position like this. I'm sure other things I want to talk about, we'll probably get into with your questions. I can talk more, but I'd be happy to let you guys just ask me what's on your mind, and we can get started or continue.
Great. This is your time, members of the commission, to ask whatever questions you want of Mr. Hoffman regarding the district judge position.
Mr. Hoffman, let me jump in. I'm Peter Johnston, and I want to thank you for your time. One of the terms that we find in the statute that kind of guides what we do, and one of the terms that we all hear about, is judicial temperament. And so I want to ask you kind of first what that means to you, and then in particular, what I'm interested in is how you would handle the transition from being a private person with a somewhat active social media presence, or at least a social media presence, to being a district judge. And how would that transition work for you? And just kind of walk us through that judicial temperament concept from your vantage point.
Yeah, sure. Great questions. In terms of temperament, particularly in my experience in public meetings and in public things I've done, I really feel like I have a good background in terms of courtroom, in terms of handling a meeting, running an agenda, running a hearing, which is really, in a sense, just a different form of an agenda meeting. By which I mean, I just go to municipal and county meetings all the time, and I kind of have a sense of making sure you manage expectations, keep calm. I de-escalate everything. People have said to me, it's hard to compliment yourself in an interview, but people have said to me that I do a very good job keeping cool, keeping composed. If people are escalating the tension, I can just bring it back down to focus. And I think that has been really good for me, and what has helped me in being drawn into these municipal and county council roles. But I think it would be something I'd really bring into the courtroom, but just calm, cool, setting expectations before the meeting. Here's what we're going to talk about. Here's what I want to hear. Here's what you need to do. Those kinds of things. Social media is, the great curse of our time in a lot of ways. And so it's like a bad habit. It's like, To me, it's something I enjoy. I enjoy communicating with people in my community about it. I've always, whether I'm in private practice or a judge or whatever it is, social media is a very terrible venue for people to have in-depth discussions about complicated issues, in my opinion. It is a fun place for memes, pictures of my kids, which I probably overshare, cats, funny things like that. And that's really what I try and do with my page. Community events is, the public square has really, in terms of announcements, gone to a lot of social media. So, partially just because I just kind of came of age a little bit into the Facebook era and the social media era, I'm more involved than I probably should be. I think it'll be a real challenge for judges and attorneys and people going forward, because there's going to be all this history from people when they were 20 and 15 and 13 for posting, and I'm kind of the tip of that in some ways, but to the extent I probably post more than I should. I try and always keep it, no matter who I'm talking to, I always try and keep it professional. Remember that I represent myself, but others. As a county counselor, that could always come back to me in one of the places I work at if I was posting something ridiculous or offensive. And so it would be that times 10 probably. Does that answer the question? I don't know if it's an adequate answer, but that's my
No, it
answer.
does. Thank you. I appreciate that.
This is Bob Martin, and we've never met, but just following up a little bit on that, as far as he was talking about demeanor, can you give me an example of a judge or two that you appreciate or maybe would like to emulate as far as their demeanor? And then a second part to that, and I'm a follow-up question guy, I'll go ahead and give it to you in advance. Who a judge would be for organization, and it doesn't have to be the same judge, and a lot of time it's not, because those are two parts that are obviously big.
Yeah, no, it's a great question, and one I anticipated enough to have an answer to, so I'm really excited about it. But so I'm gonna list a judge that's retired, which I think is even more appropriate, and that's Mike Keeley from Barton County and from the 20th Judicial District, which is someone I practice in front of a lot. But Judge Keeley, what I liked about him, for one thing, if you know him, he's an excellent person, just all around, good person to be around. What I love about his courtroom demeanor is just the professionalism he gave to every attorney, every argument he listened to. He never, he just always paid respect and professionalism and dignity, I think, to all the participants in court. If he thought your argument was terrible, he was not going to sit there and run you down in front of the courtroom and make you look like you made a terrible argument. He would just take it under advisement, deliberate, and then get back to you. And so I think that is definitely an important thing. When a judge has a lot of potential, has a high bully pulpit if they want to use it to kind of, just basically you can make any attorney look foolish at any time if you really wanted to. And that to me undermines the dignity of the court, not just that judge and that attorney. That really undermines the entire profession and the courtroom. So, that would be my answer. Judge Keeley is excellent. Your follow-up in terms of organization, I've seen some judges who who struggled to timely respond to decisions. And obviously as a profession, that is extremely frustrating for us. So the judges I practiced for, I think they all I can't think of anyone who I think did an exceptional job responding, but I definitely think that, in all my work, it's crucial to be timely. It's crucial for the judicial system to give timely responses. If you have to make a hard decision, it's going to be hard in a week. It's going to be hard in 3 weeks, so putting it off doesn't really assist you. And I'm what they call it, zero inbox kind of guy. So I think I would definitely take the attitude to if I were fortunate enough to be a judge, the idea of having 10 decisions to write and procrastinating on them would just drive me up a wall. I just couldn't do it. So I think that's really important, though, if that answers your question.
It does. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Hoffman, I'll jump in.
Okay, great.
This is Bob German. I don't think I've had the privilege of meeting you. However, I know some of the other members of your firm and dealt with them for years. I've looked over your materials very carefully. They're very impressive. I have one question, and I was just curious. What are the aspects about this judicial position that prompted you to apply for it? I was just curious. Thank you.
No, sure, of course. You know, I have kind of gotten to the point, you know, I just turned 40. So I'm reaching that mid-career level, I feel like, where, you know, to some extent, we have a great profession where we're always going to learn. You never stop learning, but I'm not a novice anymore, I don't think. And so a couple of years ago, I realized that I did the general practice of law, whatever comes in the door and taking care of things can be very frustrating because you always feel like you know a little bit of everything, but you never really feel very competent in anything. So I started to get into the county counselor because it just felt like something I really it became a niche I went into. And the other thing I learned that I loved about county counselor, and I am getting back to answer your question because I'm taking a long way to get there. But when I help these governments, when I help the county, when I help the city, I feel like I am not just, you know, doing a legal job and performing it well, but I'm also adding a benefit to the community and society, right? Because if I help them make a good decision, keep a legal decision, then it flows through to the people that live there that they may never realize it, but they're benefiting from better government because they got good legal counsel. And I like that aspect of using my legal skills in a way that I think, you know, of course I want to have a house and a car and everything and take care of my family, but I also like the idea of using it in a way that helps society in some way. To me, the judicial district judge is just the embodiment of that. You don't have to do billable hours. You have a responsibility basically to the people to justice, right? I mean, your job is to get up every day and try and help run an efficient courtroom and help bring justice to people. And that's just it's an overwhelmingly awe-inspiring concept, but it sounds really interesting, and I can't imagine not wanting to jump out of bed every day to do that. It just sounds really cool. So that's I see it as a way to use legal skills in a way that I think will hopefully help people's life, help society, help Saline and Ottawa County, help Kansas.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Hoffman, this is Justice Wall, and I'm a non-voting member, but just to make sure that we covered all the bases, I know you described some of your experience, and before you jumped on, Chief Judge Young sort of gave us some background about the district court position in the 28th Judicial District and the breadth of types of cases that the candidate would encounter, one area being criminal law. And maybe you could tell us a little bit about how, unless I've misunderstood it, how the transition to criminal substantive law would be for you.
Yeah, no, thank you very much. I kind of shortened my intro because I thought it might be a hot panel, so I can go back over that some. So I did initially do court-appointed work, and I think the reputation of my firm, and particularly my father, is not a courtroom attorney. So I think people assume that I had never done that type of work. But doing court-appointed cases in Ellsworth County particularly, I did defend criminal defendants several times. I'm not going to say I lived in the courtroom, but I've been through that process, so I know some of that. And then also when I transitioned to do more municipal courtroom, I started, one of the things they give you as a city attorney is the municipal court. And actually starting 5 or 6 years ago in Marquette, Kansas, of all places, which kind of ran a fairly busy municipal court, was just a great way to really start doing that, because they would have a monthly municipal docket with about 3 or 4 relatively low things, but I got started there. And then when I took over the Ellsworth docket, Ellsworth City does a little bit a little bit more. So I do have some experience of thinking of things like a prosecuting attorney and some things as a criminal defense attorney. Will there be a learning curve to be a criminal, judge? Absolutely, of course. Going to have to hit the books again and listen to things. I think the great thing about the practice of law is, and the judge, I don't have to know every single law about everything, because I will have two competent attorneys making arguments for me. And my job would be, if I were to do it, evaluating those two arguments, checking their references, checking to make sure that what they're stating is that they're reciting the law correctly. But really it's about evaluating those two arguments and coming up with the better argument. I personally have had the experience of some judges who, the two attorneys are arguing what they think are the crucial issues of the case, and the judge then comes up with a third one that no one had thought of. I don't think that's really efficient. I don't think that's efficient for the court. I think it's important for the judge to say, hey, I think these are the issues. I want you guys to address these things. As a judge, you have to listen. If they tell you, judge, you're actually wrong, there's a different issue you should be focused on, I need to listen to them and let them instruct me. But I want to tell them what I think is important so that they can both do a good job telling me what the right answer is. And then, my job is to evaluate it and pick the correct one. And that's the case with criminal law, with any kind of law, right? I have in my background, county counselor, one thing that people would have never realized, I've had the chance as a county counselor to administratively assist community corrections, juvenile justice, and the sheriffs very closely, and the sheriffs and the administration of the jail. And I think that's actually been a really good education. It would make me I would have a different perspective as a district court judge because I've worked with those things. I've heard community corrections has taught me how community corrections is 11 times less expensive to the state taxpayers than sending them to corrections. But also, we had a great presentation the other day where I learned that if a offender commits a crime that is in the presumptive prison box, their chances of making it through probation on community corrections are not very good, really, statistically speaking. So you really have to think about things like that when you're making those borderline decisions, presumptive prison versus corrections. Is this person really a good candidate for corrections? Am I setting them up to succeed, or am I just burdening the community corrections system with somebody else? And so I think we kind of forget about juvenile services and community corrections, to be honest, and they can really help the entire court system if they're functioning well. So it would be interesting. It'd be great being a criminal judge. I would have to learn some things, but I think that would be a wonderful thing to get to learn and do.
Do we have any other questions for Mr. Hoffman from the commission? Seeing none, Mr. Hoffman, if you want to take a minute to wrap up any final thoughts or takeaways that you want the commission members to remember, and that would conclude your interview.
No, that'd be wonderful. I think I talked a little bit about my concept of a judge. I kind of see it as running a meeting, moderating a meeting, setting the expectations so that the attorneys involved know what I'm looking for and can be successful. It's important to me, I always think, if I know exactly what is expected of me at a hearing, I do a better job prepping for it. And I think, I want everybody's best. I would want everyone's best argument that day because, if they're not, that's just efficient justice. I would hate the job of a district court judge. One of them is to try not to be overruled. I think that's obvious, but I just want to say that's important to me. Even the job is not to say what I think the law would be, what I think the law should be. Of course, it's what the law is, because being overruled and sending it back down is, again, inefficient for everyone's time. And in the long run, so we want to avoid that. Again, one thing that county counselor, I frequently have boards that are making policy decisions, and And it's not my job as in that role. It's not my job to say what the policy should be. It's to help them do it legally and do that under the law. Same thing with court. It's not my job to say what the statute should be. It's my job. It would be my job to administer it or rule on it properly. And then I guess my final thought I had as a takeaway for this, if I'm wrapping up, is I've always loved this saying that leadership is not a position. Leadership's not a title. Leadership is an action, right? I feel like this district court judge it's not about being a title of judge. It's not about being a position as judge. It's really about someone doing the actions of district court judge and doing them to the best of their ability and doing them well. And that's really what I would love the opportunity to try and do. So if you don't have any more, if you think of it, if that triggered any more questions, I'm happy to take them. But
Any final questions? Looks like you covered the bases very well, Mr. Hoffman, and it's great to see you again. I had the chance to meet Mr. Hoffman among many other community members last week when the court traveled to Great Bend. So it's great to see everybody together again there.
good to see you again. That was, if Saline County ever considers doing that, I guess, are they on your schedule? Because that was an excellent experience. Everyone's been talking about how good it went for the Supreme Court to be in Great Bend. So,
well, yes, we would love to get out there for sure. So that was very fun. It's great to take the court to the communities across the state. So,
all right. Well, I guess I'll leave unless someone has anything else for me.
For your time.
Thank you for your time, Mr.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
That concludes Mr. Hoffman's interview. And next up, we've got Amy Taylor Norton. And Marcia, are you available to bring Ms. Norton into the interview?
Yes, I am, and I will do that now.
Thank you. Good morning, Ms. Norton. How are you?
Good morning, Justice Wall. I am good.
Great. It's great to see you. I apologize, as I did to Mr. Hoffman, who just finished his interview, that I think we called you this morning, said we're going to move you up because we had one of the applicants withdraw. And then we ran into a technical issue and or closer to your original scheduled time. So apologize for that.
That's
But we're
fine.
here now. And the way I've been handling this is if you want to take a minute to just introduce yourself to the members of the commission, maybe give a little bit of background about yourself, and then we'll turn it over to questions. And at the end of the questions, then give you a minute to sort of wrap up and give concluding remarks.
Okay. Thank you for the opportunity to introduce myself. I know some of you professionally, but I know I'm a stranger to others of you on the panel. I grew up primarily in Houston, Texas. I came from a large blended family with 5 brothers and sisters. I finished high school in San Diego, California, and then moved to San Antonio, Texas, to get my undergraduate degree at Trinity University. And I majored in speech communication, which has since been renamed human communication and is really the study of rhetoric and how humans effectively communicate with each other. I then moved to Kansas in 2005, and I attended Washburn University, graduated in 2008, and Kansas has been my home ever since then. And I have known that I wanted to be a lawyer since about middle school. I know it sounds a little corny to say that, but I was inspired by Atticus Finch in To Kill a Mockingbird and Clarence Darrow and his fictional counterpart in Inherit the Wind, as well as by my stepfather, Judge William Helsper, who was an administrative law judge with Social Security for many years. And I've always known and always had great examples of how lawyers and judges can, for lack of a better way to phrase it, change the world for individuals and communities. They can make changes big and small that affect people on a small scale, but also society for years to come. And when you become a lawyer to change the world and make it a better place like I did, being a judge is really the sort of paramount achievement to that. And that is why I've applied for this commission or this position in Saline County. I want to take my years of experience and skills and help make the Saline and Ottawa County legal community the best it can be. So with that, I will happily answer questions from the commission.
members of the commission, then it's now your time to ask Ms. Norton any questions that you have for her.
Norton, I'm Peter Johnston, and I'd like to ask you a little bit about judicial temperament, which is a term that we use a lot. It's a term we hear a lot. It's a term that is in the statute that sort of guides our commission in doing our work. So I'm curious what judicial temperament means to you, and if it would require any changes for you moving from a role in the AG's office, or certainly a role as a private citizen, into the more public role as a district judge. Can you walk us through that?
So I think judicial temperament means obviously a judge's behavior in court, and not only how they behave in court, but how they conduct court proceedings themselves, how they let other counsel appear, parties appear. I believe it's very important for a judge to maintain really that sort of gravitas that we expect from a judge, that things are to be handled respectfully, in a serious nature, and in a way that does not in any way minimize or trivialize either party or the matters to be addressed. I have always sort of had sort of my in-court persona versus, I might be silly and crack jokes in the office, but once you step into the courtroom, I always feel like stepping into a courtroom should always, sort of take your breath away. You should always have a sort of moment when you step into court, and that you've now shifted into understanding that we are serious, we are calm, respectful, polite, even in the midst of maybe vigorous litigation from the other side, that we do not, nobody loses their temper, nobody resorts to any sort of foul name calling or anything like that. But even more so by the judge has to remain sort of the cool, calm, collected person in charge of the courtroom. So I don't think that would require a whole lot of personal changes on my part, since it's something I've always done and tried to do to the best of my abilities.
And if I can follow up just quickly about the out of the courtroom part. So if I do something silly on vacation, that's not news. Or if I do something on social media, that's not news to anybody. But if a sitting district judge does, that can be news. So what would that transition be like for you?
Certainly, I think that something that, a judge is a judge 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And certainly you have to be cognizant of, things you can and cannot post on social media, things you can and cannot do just in your personal life. Given that I've been a prosecutor in Salina for a long time, and I live in that community, and it's not a huge community, I've always been very aware that there are just things that I can't do. I can't go out to a bar and get drunk. There are, to give an example, there are just things that I can't do. So again, I don't think that that's a huge shift that I would have to undergo as a judge, since I've already been pretty much aware of that from the beginning. But yes, if certain things can't get posted or shared, and I would probably, for the most part, shut down any social media I have, just to avoid any chance that something might get said or taken out of context or anything like that.
Thank you.
If I may go next, and it's probably a question you're expecting as well. You've practiced quite a bit in the criminal area, exclusively in the criminal area. This is a criminal judge position as it's laying out right now, but you've done it on the prosecutorial side and never on the defense side, as far as what I could see. Do you think that'd be a hard transition for you to where you have to balance the positions of both sides at that point?
It is certainly something that I'm aware of, but prosecutors are under that sort of heightened ethical scrutiny under the rules of professional conduct. We have to be as objective as possible. We have to be open and honest in our dealings with defense counsel. We can't, for lack of a better word, hide the ball or anything like that. And I've always strived as a prosecutor to be as fair and objective as I can. I know that the system cannot operate without defense counsel on the other side and competent defense counsel on the other side. And I've always listened to defense attorneys when they have things that they want to explain from their client's perspective about a case or what happened or anything like that. I think I've always tried to be as sort of middle of the road as I can. Being a prosecutor for me is not about winning. It's never been about winning. It's about getting a just result, and a result that is just not only to, say, the victims of a crime, but to the defendant as well. So I know that I was expecting that question, and I have only ever been a prosecutor in criminal cases, but I've also always been very aware that I cannot rule out or exclude things from the defendant's perspective. So I think that going forward as a judge, I would be able to set aside myself as a prosecutor. I am now the judge. My job is to treat both sides fairly, impartially, and give equal weight and credit to whatever each side presents to me.
Thank you.
Ms. Norton, this is Don Merriman. I'm a former county clerk here and county election officer. And during that time I served, I know that the district court here has a very successful program in calling drug court with Judge Johnson. I was just wondering if you were how familiar you are with that drug court.
I'm very familiar. I was the prosecutor assigned for several years before I left Sling County.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Ms. Norton, this is Bob German. I just had a question. Have you ever, in your professional experience, had to deal with a situation or support a legal position in a case that was contrary to your personal belief? And if you did, how did you handle it?
There are certain aspects of criminal law that I don't necessarily wholly agree with. Have I ever had to go into court and argue something that I was just vehemently opposed to? I'm not sure that I have an example that comes to mind. But I also have to understand that I'm the prosecutor and I have a job to do, and that is to go in and argue for whatever it's been determined I should argue for, or what the law says is appropriate. And that really kind of circles back to, I think, Mr. Martin's question about, how do you go from being a prosecutor to a judge? And that's really an instance where, within the bounds of the law of what I can do, if there was something that I didn't agree with, that was where I really sat down and I listened to defense counsel. And if I needed to agree to a departure sentence in a criminal case because I felt like what the law said the appropriate sentence was just not appropriate or just, that was when I would do that.
Thank you very much. And just as you know, I have had the privilege of working with you in the past on several cases. And so I thank you.
Ms. Norton, I am a non-voting member of the commission as the chair. But I always like to ask a question just to sort of make sure all the information is available to the members. When you saw the notice or the position vacancy or knew that it was coming up, what is it about this job that said, this is right for me? What attracts you to this position and makes you the right fit for a district court judge?
To answer the first part of that, what attracted me to the job was that it's in my home county. It's in my home district where I've worked for many years, and I have developed, I think, good relationships with both sides of the bar, with court staff and people in the clerk's office. So to have the chance to work in my home district with the people that I've worked with before, I thought that was a great opportunity. What makes me a good fit for this particular position, I think, is one, because of my experience working in Saline County, where I am familiar with the volume and the caseload that is kind of unique to this district, and the number of cases that each judge has to deal with, and the almost rapid fire way that cases sometimes need to be addressed. That's something that I had to deal with as a prosecutor, so it's certainly something I'm comfortable with, and I think could step right into the role and sort of hit the ground running and be able to do. Also, I know that a judge makes very serious decisions that can literally affect people for the rest of their life. And that's something that I've had experience doing as a prosecutor, especially in the last 5 to 7 years, and handling the serious cases that I've handled, where I have to determine if, someone, if I'm going to accept a plea or if I'm going to go to trial, or, what the sentencing, consequences will be both for the defendant and the victim. So I'm used to making those sort of big, heavy type of decisions. And also, I think one of the big important things that a judge has to be able to do is not only to make a decision, but to be able to make a ruling in such a way that it is adequately supported by facts and law, and to be able to make that ruling in a way that will hold up under appellate scrutiny. And my experience both as a prosecutor and doing my appellate work, I think certainly prepared me to be able to know what I need to lay out and how to lay it out in a ruling that will survive that sort of appellate scrutiny. So I think all of my skills and experience really would translate well to being a judge in this particular district.
Some of
I
that.
have a question for you, Miss. Oh, sorry, Miss Norton. Hello. As
Hello.
of right now, Judge Thompson's position is criminal docket. We know things can change up at the 28th. I'm just curious if they would change it to a civil docket and that would be your job. Would you be as comfortable with that as you are with criminal law?
I certainly would have some catching up to do if it became a civil docket. I can't hide that fact at all. Obviously, from doing the forfeiture work that I did for a while, that was entirely civil. So I'm not completely unfamiliar with civil law, but there are certainly some things I would have to brush up on, especially in the realm of domestic law. That's not something that I've had any experience with. And really, I would just approach it kind of like studying for the bar. You have to educate yourself quickly and efficiently. And there would certainly be things I would have to learn and learn fast, but I'm always up for a challenge. So I'm not terribly worried about that now.
Thank you.
Ms. Norton, this is Lance Cochran. The question I would have for you, and I think you may be somewhat addressed, but I'd like you to address it in a little more detail. When you become a judge, you somewhat retreat from the bar, you retreat from the public. Are you at all concerned about that? And if you are, how do you think you'll deal with that?
This sounds terrible. I wouldn't call myself a terribly social person to begin with. I have a small circle of friends and acquaintances, and I'm not hugely in the public eye, I think, to begin with. So, are there changes that I would have to make? Yes, absolutely. Obviously, would I be sad to have to distance myself from a few of my friends? Absolutely. But, they're friends, they're supportive, they understand. And if that's where they feel that I want to go in my life, then they would understand. And I don't think that, again, I'd be sad to have to limit or mitigate that contact. But if it's what needs done, it's what needs done.
Any other questions for Ms. Norton? Seeing no other questions, Ms. Norton, it was great to see you again and welcome you back to this group. But if you want to take a minute and wrap up any final thoughts that you want to leave with the members of the commission, and then we can conclude at the end of your remarks.
Thank you. Again, I do want to address what I think is probably, at least for this commission, maybe the biggest concern is that my history has been solely as a prosecutor. And I just wanted to reiterate that I have never in any way, shape, or form liked the idea of hiding anything from defense counsel. Defense counsel and I are partners in achieving justice in front of the court. I believe that I have conducted myself in a way that recommends me to the bench. I hope that my supporting letters and character witnesses have hopefully given me a good recommendation and spoken to my professionalism and my desire to see that again, that there is a just result in the case. I have never been concerned about my win-loss record or my winning at all costs. I frankly abhor that idea as a prosecutor. And I'm smart. I learn quickly. I have great detail recall, and you have to, when you do a bunch of cases in a rapid amount of time, you have to be able to keep them straight. And I think that my experience, my skills, my background have really prepared me and equipped me to be able to do this job and to be a good judge. And I hope the commission can see that. And with that, I will simply leave it to you. And thank you again for the questions and for giving me the chance to address the commission.
Thank you.
Thank you much.
Thank you, ma'am.
Have a
Thank
wonderful
you,
day.
Ms. Norton. Appreciate your time today.
Thank you.
With that, Marcia, we can let Ms. Norton go from the meeting and bring in Mr. Peterson for our next interview.
Oops. Wow. Okay, let's see, did she leave? I clicked on something that just,
She is gone now.
Okay,
Ms. Norton
all
is.
I tried to help her out, but I clicked something different. Okay, I'm admitting Jake Peterson.
Good morning, Mr. Peterson. How are you?
I'm well. How are you, Judge?
Very good. You're coming through really clearly and we can all see you well. So that's a great start.
Great.
Just to give you a little bit of a heads up, the way we've been proceeding, I've been giving the applicants just a minute or two to introduce themselves, give some background about yourself. Then we'll open it up to the members of the commission to ask questions of you. And then, at the conclusion of your time, we'll give you a minute or two to wrap up and give us any final comments that you want the commission members to remember as they sort of deliberate on their decision.
Very good. Sounds great.
And with that, you can go ahead and give any opening remarks you might have for the members.
Certainly. Well, first off, I really appreciate everybody's time and the opportunity to speak with the commission this morning. As you saw from my application materials, I've been a lawyer at Clark Mize and Linville here in Salina since 2012. And during that time, I've had a really pretty broad range of practice experience, from estate planning to trying criminal jury trials, civil jury trials, some pretty significant appellate experience as well. Really have had and I'm thankful to have had a really wide range of cases I've had the opportunity to work on here at Clark Mize. But the reason why I'm wanting to apply for this position is fundamentally, I believe that we're a nation state and community of laws. Those laws define the relationship of people to one another and with their government. And to me, facilitating that proper application of the law through the judiciary is, in my opinion, one of the highest callings of service in the legal profession. And it's that service, that proper application of the law that's really drawn me to apply for this position. And based on my legal career thus far, I think I have that well-rounded experience, the analytical abilities, demeanor, intellectual curiosity, solid relationships with other members of the bar and the bench, and the communication abilities to where I could really be a great service to the people of our community and to our state and in our third branch of government. So with that, I appreciate the opportunity to answer any questions that you have.
Members of the commission, it's your time to ask any questions you have for Mr. Peterson.
So Jake, let me start and just get this out of the way. Obviously, you are a partner in our law firm. So I've known you a long time. So I don't want to belabor that, but if other members, I think that's clear to everybody, but if it's not, you and I are partners in the same law firm. Fair?
That's fair.
Okay. I'm always interested in the concept of judicial temperament. It's in the statute that kind of tells us what we do. And so I'm interested in how an applicant sees that concept of judicial temperament, and specifically, what it means to you, and what kind of change would be involved for you to transition from a private practicing lawyer, a private citizen, into a role as a district judge. So can you talk to us about that, please?
Sure. So in terms of judicial temperament, I think it's vitally important for the court to maintain kind of an even keel, even-handed demeanor. There are going to be a lot of litigants, a lot of people with very emotional problems, very stressful situations that they're presenting the court with, and tensions are going to rise in the courtroom. I think it's the role of the judge to kind of bring those tensions down a notch and not to rise to that level as the judge. I also believe that while the bench needs to maintain relationships with the bar, I think it's important for somebody from the bench to be able to talk with other lawyers, maybe outside of the case. I also think it's really important to maintain a certain degree of professionalism, a certain degree of distance, just to ensure that everybody involved with the court understands that they're getting a fair, even-handed shake. So I'm under no illusions that my relationships with you, for example, Peter, or some of the other folks in the bar are going to change, and they're going to have to change if I'm going to assume the position of judge, just to make sure that everybody's aware, understands, and observes that that's an impartial place for them to have their disputes be heard.
Does that, and I can't honestly say that I know the answer to this, does that impact you from a social media standpoint? And can you, if so, can you talk about that?
I really don't think it does. I had a Facebook account for a while. I had it through law school, I think, or maybe before. I didn't actively use it, haven't actively used it in 10 or 15 years. And I deactivated it several years ago. And I don't have any other social media presence.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Jake, Bob Martin, unlike prior to, I have had some cases with you, not a ton of cases at all through the years. And I believe both on both sides of opposing you. I think we actually tried a case against each other at one point. But in looking through what you've done, you have a very broad scope, obviously, of both prosecutorial and defense, quite a bit of civil cases. You understand that as we're looking right now, this is a criminal judge position as it stands today that we're looking to fill.
Yes, that's correct. Yes, I understand that.
And you don't, and you understand that, eyes wide open, and that you may not be able to go into the other areas that you've also practiced in, correct?
Yes, I understand that the docket I'm going to be overseeing is largely a function of what Judge Young, as the chief judge, how she wants to allocate cases. Now, I have talked to Judge Young about that, and I'm happy, ready, willing, and able to take on a full criminal docket and do only criminal stuff. But Judge Young has also talked to me about whether I'd be interested in taking on different cases, and whether or not I would be interested in taking on some of the civil docket or some of the probate docket. So I think there's some room to maybe shift the dockets around, but certainly I understand that the vast majority, if not all of my work, will be criminal.
And outside of the court, and you've had, I know, quite a bit of courtroom experience outside of the courtroom, have you taken any activities in the criminal area as far as CLE or presenting CLEs, papers, things of that nature in the criminal area?
In terms of CLEs or papers, I haven't written any since I've gotten into practice. I will say that the my strong focus in law school was criminal, frankly. My note that I wrote for the Journal of Law and Policy for Washington University was based on the level of proof that was required to attach GPS trackers to vehicles, basically. And before that time, I think the Supreme Court came out with a decision in 2014 on that issue. But at that time, when I was writing it, there wasn't any case law on that. So aside from that article, I haven't written anything on it since then. I did take, and I believe I put on through the Young Lawyers section of the KBA, after the Rice decision came out on DUI law, I believe I helped to facilitate a webinar through the Young Lawyers section on that issue. But those are the two criminal law continuing education and articles that are coming to mind right now.
Thank you.
Mr. Peterson, I'm Justice Wall, and I'm a non-voting member of the commission, but I always like to throw out a question to our applicants, whether it's just that they have all the information for them or it might spur further discussion. But when you saw the opening or the vacancy, what about the district judge position attracts you to that role? And what makes you the right fit for that position?
Sure. So a few things attracted me to that role. The first being that I am interested in serving the community on the bench, serving the community, serving the state. And I do believe it's a position of service. You're there to keep the courthouse doors open, to make sure that everybody has a chance for their case to be heard. Secondly, the thing that attracted me to it is, as a lawyer, and I'm sure the other lawyers on the commission can understand this, sometimes you have to take positions that are maybe right for your client, but aren't necessarily the right answer. I'm interested in coming to the right answer, not just the right one for my client. And that has some real appeal to me. And when I've talked to other district court judges in preparing for this interview, that's one of the things that they said is the most gratifying part of their job, is that they have the opportunity and ability to make the right decision under the facts and the law. And then finally, I do think I have a lot to offer this position. I think I have the analytical chops, the communication abilities, the relationships with the bar and the community, that I could really serve this position quite well. And I'm interested in getting out in the community as a district court judge, talking to people about what the role of the court is, how the judiciary works. And I think that's one of the things that's fundamentally misunderstood by a large portion of the public, and certainly a lot of my clients as well. And I think I have that even-handed demeanor to replicate some of the best judges, in my opinion, that I've had the opportunity to appear before. So really, it's those three reasons: service, the opportunity to make the right decision, and frankly, I think I have the characteristics and drive and ability to fill this role quite well.
Any other questions?
Can I follow up on that?
Sure.
Mr. Peterson, like you were talking about the ability to do right and in the law, I'm curious if the defendant and the prosecutor came into you with a plea agreement that you did not feel was fair to the victims or the citizens of Saline County as taxpayers, would you feel comfortable in sending that plea agreement back and having them renegotiated?
Yes. I believe that we need to be judicious about that, understanding that the court isn't privy to all the discussions, all of the facts that the prosecutor or the defendant may have access to. But I know for a fact that recently happened in a case involving a juvenile victim up at district court, and I think that there are circumstances where that's appropriate, and that's a proper exercise of judicial authority given the right circumstances.
Thank you.
Jake, this is Lance Cochran. And I guess my question is, you're somewhat young, you're younger than me anyway. The position of a judge is somewhat lonely and isolated, at least from the bar, probably from the public. How do you think you can deal with that? And is that a concern of yours?
That's a great question. I understand that there will be more isolation. Certainly, Mr. Cochran, we practice in pretty similarly sized firms, and part of the collegiality of being in a law firm like that is that you get to know and have friends at the firm. And it's fun to practice law with other people, and rewarding to practice law with other people. And I understand that there's going to be a certain degree of isolation. The buck stops with you as a district court judge. But at the same time, I know that the district court judges here in our judicial district get along quite well. They interact all the time, both professionally and personally. I do think that I would have the opportunity to maintain some relationships with lawyers in the community. I know that there's a couple lawyers in our firm who interact with sitting judges right now. I think the caution with that would be is that those judges don't hear cases with their friends as counsel, and that's something that I would certainly do and take great pains to recuse myself. But I'm somewhat of an introverted person. I work alone a fair amount. It doesn't bother me to do that. With the pandemic restrictions and having to work from home a lot, that did not bother me. That isolation did not bother me one bit. I can get on the phone, interact with some people a couple times a day, and that's fine. And frankly, as a district court judge, I think, the interactions with the bar would be increased from the way my practice is right now. So while I'm cognizant of the isolating nature of being the one who's making the call, I think there are other avenues to get that kind of social interaction. And the other thing is I've got young kids. I've got kids who are 6 and 4 right now. So I'm going to be interacting with parents and socially as they grow up as well. So that while it's something I'm cognizant of and processed, I don't know that it will be a particular problem for me.
Jake, this is Bob German, and I've had the privilege of working with you over the past on several cases. I'm familiar with your materials. I just had a question for you. What, in your opinion, do you see as the most significant challenge facing our court system here in Saline County, and how would you address it?
Certainly. So when I've spoken with district court judges and frankly practitioners in our judicial district, the common refrain I hear is volume. The courts are slammed. When we were talking about recovering from the pandemic, for example, and I know you know this, Mr. German, the criminal dockets were stacked 7-8 jury trials deep, which is just unsustainable. I think, that's a significant problem. And there are a couple of solutions to that. One is getting more judges. And I believe that that's hopefully being addressed through the state judicial budget. I understand that that's likely going to happen, to where we will have additional judges to help alleviate some of that volume. But there's also the issue associated with the offenses that are being committed. and that's frankly a policy decision, I believe, that's more suited for the executive and legislative branch. But there are ways that the court system can help. I think, increased use of specialty courts, for example. I know that the drug court is a post-sentencing opportunity for defendants, but it does reduce recidivism, which is a lot of the volume problem. I understand from talking with Judge Johnson that there may be an opportunity for drug courts to hear cases maybe before sentencing here in the near future with a legislative change. That would be positive. I'm also interested in pursuing a veterans court. Judge Johnson and Judge Thompson have both talked about perhaps starting a veterans specialty court. I know they've done that in Johnson County with some good success. That's another way to help folks. And focusing on that recidivism piece, I also think that engaging restorative justice services through Surge and Ann Zimmerman, for example, is another way we might be able to do that, at least with juvenile offenders. Catching those kids when they make a bad decision early on, is a great opportunity for those kind of services to try to change the path that they're on. And while that might not be a short-term fix, it hopefully will be a long-term one. So I think there are a number of ways that volume issue can be addressed, and I'm certainly interested in pursuing those.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any additional questions? I don't see any. So Mr. Peterson, thank you for your time, but it will give you a minute or two to provide any concluding remarks you have for the members of the commission as they head off to deliberate.
Yeah, thank you, Justice Wall. Again, I just want to say thank you for your time and for your service on the commission. I know it can be a difficult job, and it's a time commitment as well. So I very much appreciate it. And as I've talked about, I think being a district court judge is a position with a whole lot of different roles, a whole lot of different responsibilities. They're there to facilitate claims and disputes being heard. They're there to make decisions, crucial decisions on the disputes that are before them. They're there to serve as an umpire before court and counsel and the jury to make sure that the jury has the information that they need to make a proper decision under the law. They have responsibilities to those litigants, to the profession, and to the community. I believe I have the skill set and the characteristics to serve in that role well. And frankly, being selected for a position on the bench would be the greatest honor of my professional life. This is a destination position for me, and I would hope to serve for many, many years to come. So thank you very much for your time and consideration, and once again for your service on the committee. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Jake. We appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Peterson.
Thank
Again,
you.
Marcia, I think we can let Jake go and bring in Mr. Sutton.
Okay.
Good morning, Mr. Sutton. How are you?
Good morning.
Good to have you here. Again, I apologize that we called you, thought we'd get you in a little bit earlier, but had some technical issues with Zoom, and now we're a little bit closer to your original start time.
That's fine, no problem.
Great. Just to give you a sort of a heads up or how the plan is to proceed, we've been letting each of the applicants take a minute or two just to introduce themselves, give a quick background about yourself, and then we will open it up to questions from the commission members. And at the end of questions, we'll turn it back to you to take another minute or two for any concluding remarks you might have.
Okay.
Great. With that, please proceed.
All right, thank you. Good morning, everyone. My name is Brad Sutton. Just a little background. I grew up out in southwestern Kansas, went to Seward County Community College out in Liberal, went to Washburn University to get my business degree, met my wife at college, and we've been married almost 25 years this year. Went to law school at Washburn, graduated, accepted a job at SRS, which became DCF, back in '98, and stayed there for many years. I covered at one point up to about 14 different counties, establishing, enforcing child support orders, was involved in some divorces as far as the child support enforcement agency being involved. Young Williams accepted a contract when DCF privatized, and I joined Young Williams. Was only covered about 3 counties there, and it was at that time I decided I needed to get more courtroom experience, more criminal law experience if I ever wanted to be in a position I am today to interview for a judgeship. And so I joined the Saline County Attorney's Office 2015, I believe. I started out doing traffic, lower level felonies, misdemeanors. There was we had to wait for a while for a decision to come down from the Supreme Court regarding DUIs. And when that Birchfield case was finally decided, DUI cases went to trial like crazy. So opened up a floodgate. I think I was doing 18 or 20 jury trials a year for a lot of DUIs and everything until COVID hit. And at that point, we had also went to an assigned courtroom rotation where we were assigned to a courtroom. Each attorney went to a certain courtroom to cover all the cases in that courtroom. So at that point, I started covering the higher level felonies, drug felonies, aggravated batteries, a few sex cases, some of the lesser, I guess I call them murder cases, vehicle homicides, that kind of stuff. And so I've been doing that ever since basically when we switched to a different format. In my personal life, like I said, I'm married. I have 2 kids. My son's getting ready to go to college at Bethany. He's into music, band, theater. My daughter, Savannah, she's into cross country, softball. When I'm not at work, I have 5 acres out in the county, and I enjoy gardening, doing yard work. Been active in my church for years. I was head of the property board for many years, assistant executive director for a few years, and now I'm on the endowment committee through the church. I've always wanted to be a judge, and so for several years I decided I needed in fact, somebody told me I needed criminal law experience and courtroom experience if I ever wanted to do this. So I'm here today applying for this position. Thank you.
Thank you for your opening remarks, Mr. Sutton. Now, any members of the commission are free to ask questions.
Brad, I'm going to jump in. Obviously, I'm Peter Johnston. I'm asking everybody to talk about judicial temperament. And so I really want to do that, but I can't deny that something you just said just totally piqued my curiosity. So can you tell us first, can you just tell us briefly, why do you think that you've always wanted to be a judge? What is it about that job that's always appealed to you?
You know, when I was, to be honest with you, I'll go back. When I was in 12th grade, we had a mock trial class in government, and a teacher made me be the defense attorney, and I was really mad. I wanted to be the judge, but at that point, I kind of realized it. I mean, I've always liked, if you watch the crime shows of old in Law and Order, Boston Legal, you always get to see the different things the judges do. And in being where I've been, I've always got to see different judges I've been in 14 different counties, so I've seen numerous different judges in different counties do things differently. And I've been able to take those and see what they do. I know a lot of it is, and I've been told this by judges, a lot of it is just, mundane stuff, but there's also a lot of things that the judges do, the criminal system right now, the justice system's taking a beating. I mean, people are saying bad things about law enforcement and, judges, prosecutors, all of us. And so I really want to be part of that, to where, I tell everybody I can how good the system is. We're doing what we can, and I want to be part of that system and always have. And the next step for me is I would like to be a judge.
Thank you for that. And then my follow-up to that, and this is kind of what I've been asking everybody, is we read and see the term judicial temperament in the statute that kind of guides our commission. And it's one of the things that you hear, one of those terms that you hear a lot. And so can you tell us what does judicial temperament mean to you? And would it involve any kind of a change for you moving from this role into a district judge role?
Like I said, I've watched a lot of judges, and you see judges react differently to defendants, to counsel, to victims, to even people in the courtroom. To me, judicial temperament is being able to do the job that you're put there for, allowing everyone to have their say, to have their day in court, but at the same time, keeping the respect and the dignity of the court and not letting people disrespect the court. It goes down to having your, back a long time ago, you couldn't wear shorts into a courtroom. You wouldn't dare wear a hat to a courtroom. You dressed up. Now we've gotten really lax, but allowing people, to sit in the courtroom with hats, just for example, there needs to be that respect to to the system, to the judicial system. Judges, I think, have to be able to, I've seen judges get mad at people, especially defendants that, cuss and swear and call the judges every name in the book because something didn't go right. I've seen judges that showed no reaction at all and basically moved on with the case. And to me, you got to have something to where the defendant knows, I'm not supposed to do that. This is not how we react in court. And I've seen judges, and I know we've all seen them online, where judges go off on people and scream, holler, call them names and everything else. And I think that's also above and beyond what a judge should do. A judge should, you have to remember this day and age, probably everything you're doing is on video. And if anything you do is going to be on video on social media somewhere. So even if you think it's not, you've got to act like it's going to be, because one bad apple does a lot of damage to the system. So a judicial temperament is basically doing the job that you need to do, showing respect to people, but also receiving the respect that the position entitles you to.
Thank you very much.
I'll follow up on that, Mr. Sutton.
Yes.
Talking about an unruly defendant in the courtroom, if you were the judge and you had a defendant who just would not stop talking, would not stop cussing at the judge, just causing a scene, how would you as a judge handle that?
I've seen, what I've done, what I've seen, and what I would probably do is I would give the person an opportunity to cool off, have them take them out of the courtroom, have them cool off and bring them back in, explain to them why what they did is wrong, give them the opportunity to speak. But the courtroom is not someplace that we talk like sailors. Decorum is very important in the courtroom. So I would never allow anyone to go off, especially in a proceeding where it's not necessary. I would take them out of the courtroom, and I would actually do more contempt citations and have people understand that this is not how you act to a court, how you do not act like this to a judge. And hopefully that word gets out that we don't act like this in front of this judge. If it's Judge Sutton, then Mr. Sutton will not allow you to act like this. And if you do, there's consequences to be paid. But everyone needs their opportunity to be heard. Some people, that's the way they speak, but there is a time and place for that, and a courtroom is not one of those.
Thank you.
Brad, this is Bob German. I've had the occasion over the years to deal with you on numerous occasions, many cases. And I just have a question for you. Would you describe what, in your opinion, constitutes the ideal judge? And is there any judge before whom you've practiced that you perceive as a role model, would you perceive as a role model?
I think every judge has something that I've either typically admire. I'll give you an example. Judge Sexton over in Dickens County. In domestic cases, he always puts the children first, no matter what. It doesn't matter, parents or secondary parents. The children is always the first thing he looks at. So every decision he makes in a domestic case goes to the child first. I've been in front of Judge Helmer. Judge Helmer is very good at explaining to the defendant, what he's expecting, what he or she is doing is wrong, and how they need to change their life. I've been in front of a judge in Gary County that you had to be prepared. If you were prepared, your case was no problems. But if you came unprepared, you were in trouble. And if opposing counsel was not prepared, their case was in trouble as well. And I've seen judges that, Judge Thompson, for example, he thoroughly reviews the evidence in a case. We have a motion to suppress. He'll always take the time to go back and watch the video and issue a ruling on what he saw. As far as a perfect judge, I think you've got to take all of that into account. Domestic cases, you've got to take into account the parties. You've got to take into account the children. In criminal cases, everyone's presumed innocent, and everyone deserves a fair trial, but justice also needs to be served. There's victims out there that we hear it all the time that, their case isn't important and we didn't take care of them and we didn't do what we need to do. And I think as a judge, you got to take that into account, that we all have to we have to help those that are wronged by society, by those that do not conform to our norms. And that judge needs to take all that into account. And I think you have to be fair, and you have to realize that we're all human. Everyone makes mistakes, even judges. And sometimes those mistakes aren't on purpose. And sometimes, especially you have to be lenient with counsel and parties. Right now, everyone is so busy. Everyone's so understaffed that, you really can't do everything you need to do in the time frame that we have with these days, especially when we're so low staffed and short staffed. Even restaurants, even they're the same way. You have to give everybody a little bit of leeway right now because everyone's doing what they can. Judges included. I know judges, the judges are stacked like 7, 8 deep on some jury trial days just because that's where we're at, and that's the only time we can do it. But a perfect judge, there's never going to be a perfect judge, but I think someone has to take into account everything they've lived through in life, what they've seen other people do, and emulate that in being a judge.
Thank you, Brad.
Yes.
Mr. Sutton, this is Justice Wall. I like to throw a question to all the applicants as well. Your most recent experience as a prosecutor, and then to transition to the bench, quite different roles, obviously. And how do you think that transition would work out for you, where you are, as a prosecutor, working to secure a conviction on a fairly consistent basis versus the impartiality required of a district court judge?
I've never been the win at all costs type of prosecutor. I've always been able to look at a case, analyze it, see what my problems are in the case, whether it be the stop, whether it be something the officer did, whether it be just something that just happened. As a prosecutor, my job is basically to present the evidence as it comes to me. I don't get to pick and choose what comes to me. I know there's cases I've taken to motions to suppress that I knew I was going to lose, but it's something you have to sometimes do to, number one, sometimes it's a teaching experience for the law enforcement on this is what you did and let's do it different in the future. As a judge, I think you have to look at all sides. You have to make sure that justice is being administered, and you have to make sure that the prosecutor has produced the evidence that the prosecutor needs to obtain a conviction, or at least get to the part that the jury, and if it's a jury case, the jury can hear the case. For me, I've always been able to look at a case and determine what the weakness is, what the downside is. And a lot of times we resolve cases basically knowing that, their case isn't good, the evidence isn't what we'd like it to be, or it's a case where there's no way, there's no way to win. There's no way that it should go to a jury. So I think I've always had the ability to look at a case, look at what's going on, and be able to do what needs to be done. And as a judge, I look at all the evidence, look at case law if it's relevant to the case, and make a decision based on that. I know a lot of the defense attorneys probably are looking at the panel going, "Oh my goodness, we're not going to have a chance." But I think that most of the attorneys that have worked with me know that I'm fair, I'm impartial, I'll work with almost anybody. I don't know of anybody that would badmouth me and say they can't stand me, but I'll probably get a text or two here shortly of those that do, but that's fine. But for the most part, though, I think I get along with most attorneys, and I have the ability. I've always been. With SRS and DCF, I had to talk to a lot of people that weren't happy no matter what. Either it's too much child support from the payer standpoint, or it's too much or too little if you're receiving. And I've always been able to talk to both sides and be able to say, hey, this is what's going on. This is what I can do. This is what I can't do. And this is why it is what it is. And so I would use that ability as well as a judge to be able to explain why I'm doing what I'm doing and why I have to do what I do.
Justice, if I could follow up on that. Brad's Bob Martin. I had cases with you quite a bit. I don't do criminal, so I haven't anything with you on that. But the explaining what you have to do and why you have to do it, you've been dealing with that. You've been and really discussing that in a criminal situation. You did domestic for a quite long period of time. If you were sitting as judge, do you think you need to handle that differently on explaining it in a domestic situation versus, and how that would be different from a criminal?
Ultimately, no. I mean, I think it's all the same. I mean, I'll give Judge Helmer as an example. I sat through a lot of his dockets, and he really went into detail on why he made a decision. Sometimes he would go into great detail on cases, and then at the last minute he'd go, however, and then you know you're in trouble as a prosecutor or as a plaintiff. But he always explained why he ruled what he did, and he always explained this is the law, and this is why, and this is what it is. I think in a domestic case, I think you're dealing more with a lot of more emotions, a lot more of, and sometimes you're dealing with very little. We've all sat through cases where parties are fighting over paying their attorneys to fight over things that aren't even worth what the attorneys are probably getting paid in the office, or in the courtroom. But for them, it's the most important thing in the world, whether it be a set of cups or silverware. I've seen those. I think as a just judge, you have to be able to explain why you made those and do the best you can. And it may be just a situation of, I've got to give you this and give you that because this is all you have. And to make it fair, I have to do this. And you have to explain why you're ruling as you are, as far as like custody, for example. Custody's never going to be, nobody's ever going to be happy with custody. It's either too much or too little, going both ways. I have kids of my own, and I know it would be tough to be told, I only get to see my kids every other weekend and 1 week or 1 night a month or a week. But you have to be able to tell that to the parties that this is the best we can do and this is best for the children. I'll go back to Judge Sexton. You got to look at, you've got to have stability for the kids, and you got to be able to explain to the parents, I'm doing this for the kids and this is why, which, in criminal law, the same thing. You're telling them why what they did was wrong, and this is the consequences for your actions. So same thing with divorce, till death do us part. If you choose not to, there's things that are going to happen. Both parties are not going to be happy, and you just have to explain why you did the best. You made the best decision you can with what you have to work with.
Thank you, Mr. Sutton.
Any final questions for Mr. Sutton? Doesn't look like it. Every now and then I see a movement, so I was hesitating there, but I think we've got it covered. Mr. Sutton, we'll give you a minute or two to give us any concluding remarks you have.
Okay. Again, thank you for everyone on the panel for taking your time today to interview. I know this is a very important decision you have to make. Judges in this county, we're getting more, but we need the best judge we can to be able to take care of the backlog that we have, to be able to bring the level of respect that this position should be given back to the community. Not saying that it hasn't, but this position is very important for everyone in Saline County. I hope to have that opportunity. It's been something I've always wanted, but I think the judicial system is one of the best there is, and we're all doing the best we can, and I want to be part of that. So I want to thank everyone today for taking the time to interview us all today. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sutton.
Thank you.
Marcia, we can cut Mr. Sutton loose.
I will leave. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that concludes our interviews, and we can move on to determine voting procedure, but I've got a request if we can take a 5-minute break. We've been going for about 2 hours. If folks want to take a 5-minute break and get some refreshments or use the restroom, whatever you need, and then we could resume at 12:23. And I think I'm going to just everybody stay logged in, but we can just plan on coming back to our screens in 5 minutes if that works.
Sounds
Okay,
good.
we'll see everybody back in a few minutes. Thank you. We'll give Mr. Johnston and Mr. German another few seconds or minutes to get back, and then we'll resume with item 6 on the agenda. Okay, it looks like we have all the members back from break. Appreciate that. We're turning to the next item on our agenda is our procedures for voting and announcing the votes. Under Kansas statute 20-2909 A2, the commission has to send no less than 3 and no more than 5 names to the governor to select for the appointment to fill the vacancy. So you can decide prior to voting if you want to send 3 names to the governor or all 4 for that matter. So that's sort of a first threshold question. And then the next question is, how do you want to conduct the voting? Some commissions have done a non-binding vote just to see where all the other members are. Others have chosen to do it in 2 rounds where the highest number of votes, the 3 highest vote getters proceed to the next round, which would finish it. I guess we would only have 1 round in that case, but there are a lot of different options. And you, as the members of the commission, it's your decision. So we can open it up for discussion or motion. How do we want to initially determine how many folks you want to send to the governor, how many names you want to send to the governor, and then how we want to conduct procedurally the vote?
Well, for my part, I would prefer to send 3, just to send 3 to the governor. That way we're actually doing our duty of discerning and going through the interviews ourselves instead of just sending everyone up, I guess. And that's the reasons for my thought on that.
Bob, this Bob German, or excuse me, this Bob German, I would agree with that.
This is, Your Honor, this is Peter Johnston. I just can't remember. Do we rank the nominees or do we just send a slate, whether it's 3 or whether it's 4?
We don't put any ranking in it. We just submit the 3 names to the governor.
Yeah, okay.
I would like to see 3 names go up also.
This is Don. I would agree. 3.
This is Jay, and I would agree with 3.
So this is,
Go ahead.
well, I was just going to say, I'm not going to object to 3, although I want to comment that I thought all 4, frankly, have done a pretty darn good job. And I'm sitting here percolating about whether to send 4. But as I'm going through that little process, I don't think I'm going to object to 3. I just want to make that comment that I thought all 4 did a very good job.
Yes, I would agree with that. You know, you always want to have the largest number of qualified applicants as possible. And here, though we maybe didn't get the number that, you know, ideal and the best scenario might have happened, I think all were very well qualified, and we're fortunate in that respect. It does sound like there is at least a consensus. Is there? We can table it and do one single motion after we sort of figure out our process altogether. But it sounds like we've got a consensus, if not an outright uniform agreement to send a slate of 3 names to the governor. Knowing that, how do you want to vote? Do we want to just do it all in one round with the, whoever gets the most number of votes will proceed? I would caution that no matter what, I would recommend at least the commission that there be a majority of the commission that supports all 3 candidates, if that makes sense.
Judge, wouldn't it be somewhat wise to have an initial vote and then possibly go to session and see if we have some consensus and some understanding and agreement and then re-vote? I think that's the most fair to the candidates. It also gives us kind of an opportunity to speak amongst ourselves about positions and thoughts on the individual candidates. As everybody said, I was really impressed with all 4. It's going to be very tough, but I also think we have a job to do, and that job is to pare it down to 3, unfortunately. And I think we need to do that.
Yes, and you're suggesting another executive session where you could speak about some of the confidential information, it sounds like, as well, freely.
Yes.
Obviously, the vote itself, it will be public.
Of course, yeah, I was strictly talking about the confidential information presented in the.
I think that sounds very prudent, but again, it's your decision. How do other members feel about that?
That is fine with me, Your Honor. I wouldn't be opposed if we say voted and we had a top vote getter and then we need to discuss the others if there's an issue on that as well. I would assume that top vote getter would get a majority. I believe we can't do it all in one vote because obviously that may water down the vote, for lack of a better term.
I might even ask Marcia, because Marcia handles these, she doubles up and supports more than myself, other justices. And so she's seen a lot of different approaches to the voting. Marcia, any other thoughts on how other commissions have approached the voting in similar situations?
I think you've explained some of it, and I think Mr. Cochran kind of touched on it. The non-binding vote is one that commissions do just to see where their thoughts are as far as the nominees. And at that point, sometimes they'll say, so-and-so got all 8 votes or all 6 votes, that person we know would want to go. And then they're trying to figure out between, like, if the commission is split on another candidate or whatever, they'll discuss and go from there. But, and then if you have the non-binding and then you have one that receives the majority or all 6 members, someone will make a motion to say, I motion to have that name submitted as one of the names on the list. And then you can eliminate that person out of the process, so to speak. Does that make sense, everybody?
Yes.
Okay. Well, from what I'm hearing, we definitely want to send a slate of 3 candidates. We want to have some further dialogue that would incorporate some of the confidential background information, which would necessitate executive session to preserve the confidentiality of that information. But it sounded like maybe there might have been some support also to take a preliminary vote to see if there's one candidate that has uniform support from the members. But I'll leave it to you folks to make a motion on our next step in terms of voting process and procedure.
So as far as clarification, we're going to vote for one person as opposed to the top 3?
No, I wasn't suggesting that. I was suggesting if you wanted to do a non-binding vote, just after your sort of a first blush take on where everybody lays out their 3 selections, just to see if there's like one that differentiates in terms of the vote tally.
Let me, Justice Wall, if I may, I think I'd like to move that we recess into an executive session to discuss confidential background information as it may relate to these candidates, and that we do so for 10 minutes now before we take even a non-binding vote if there's information from that confidential background work that might bear on that.
I would second that motion.
Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion to recess to discuss confidential information executive session? Mr. German, I can't see your hand. Yeah, okay, all right. And Ms. Ritter, you may have raised your hand or any opposition, say no. Okay, looks like all are in favor, and we will move into executive session to do a more detailed review of the confidential information for 10 minutes. All right, we are back from executive session, but only momentarily because as most of the members of the public may or may not know, actually, the information that the commission members receive and have to go through is extraordinary. There's a great deal of information, and they've all worked very hard hunting down references and getting all the information possible to make a very good decision here today. But as a result, there's more confidential information we have not made our way through yet. So is there a motion to continue our executive session? And if so, for how long?
Mr. Justice, I would move to continue the executive session for 5 minutes.
Second.
Well, I don't even know if I need a vote, but I bet we'll do it for official. All in favor, raise your hand. Okay. And we will be back in executive session for 5 more minutes. All right, we are back after our additional 5 minutes in executive session to finish our review of the confidential information. We are now out of executive session and we'll pick back up with where we left off on the agenda, which is determining how we want to go ahead and do the vote. And then a corollary of that decision is then how do we want to announce the vote, whether we just do a roll call and list off the names, or whether we want to take some other tact or approach to doing that. Any recommendations or motions from the commission members?
I want to ask a question because I can't really remember the last time how we did this previously. Have we announced votes or have we emailed the votes? I'm having a recollection, and maybe Ms. Johnson can help me with that, although she probably does 100 of these. Did we email the votes to you at some point?
Peter, that's what I was thinking, and then they tallied them and came up with a number.
That's what we did with the magistrate vote. That is correct. It was email.
Yeah, email, you can submit your vote by email and then we can do the tally. It just creates a little extra downtime while we're manually doing that. With the move, during the pandemic, with the move to Zoom, I would say more and more commissions, we're just announcing the vote, but we can do it either way.
Well,
it's your decision.
Yeah, I think we would still announce the vote. In other words, I think what I'm recalling is that we emailed our votes to Topeka, I think to Ms. Johnson. And then she told us who the top 2 or 3, in that course, the case, we were making the decision as the magistrate judge, who the winner was, so to speak. Which if we can do that, I think that's maybe my suggestion.
Yes.
Can you make that in the form of a motion?
And it just, if it's in the form of the motion, is that to vote for 3 people then?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And I would so move.
And I'll second that.
And as I understand the motion, you would actually be, would you be filling out your official ballot and then sending that to Marcia, or just sending her a list of 3 names? I would guess it'd make more sense to knock it all out at once, right? By doing
Well, sir, yeah, I think you'd knock it out all at once. I think from a record keeping standpoint, we would email Ms. Johnson the votes that we are physically recording on our ballot. Because I think ultimately you all want us to send in those physical ballots.
That is correct.
But at the same time, we would email those votes to Ms. Johnson so that the results could be announced here in this sitting.
I think that'd be a good way to approach it, being a county election officer, former.
Oh, we should.
It's great to have that expertise with us today. Okay.
I have a question. So do we PDF these to Marcia? Scan and PDF them, the ballot?
You can, but you could also just send her an email that just tells her who they are.
All right, that's fine. Thanks.
And then we'll also fill out our official ballot, right, and sign it and date it, or not date it, but put it as number 1. Ballot
Yeah,
number.
in fact, right now, why don't we go ahead and if you've got your ballot form in front of you, it should read 28th Judicial District Nominating Commission ballot number blank. Go ahead and write number 1 in there. That'll be our first ballot. Then you don't have to do it now. Then you can, print your name at the bottom of the ballot, cast your votes, and then sign it. Communicate that then by email to Marcia, and then we can announce the totals once we've received those. After we vote to approve that process, I don't think we officially voted for that being the process. Did that process accurately reflect your motion, Mr. Johnston?
I think so. I'm anticipating that we're voting for 3. Is that what you? Yeah.
Thanks for the clarification. That's my understanding, that you will vote for 3
Yeah, and it's just three. We don't need to rank them. We're just voting for three.
Correct.
Yes, sir. That is indeed what I intended to make as a motion.
And I believe we've got a second on that already. All in favor, signify by raising your hand. Okay, looks like that motion carries. Marcia, did I miss anything in terms of our process here? Or can they go ahead and start their vote?
They just need to cross off the first applicant, Brock Abbey.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah, make sure they cross that off.
And while you're voting, then you will submit either the names that you are voting for or the actual PDF of the ballot to Marcia Johnson. And then together, she and I will start running the tallies as you're getting those into us.
I'm missing one ballot. Mr. Merriman.
We email? I don't have a way to PDF.
Can you send it in a text?
I'll send it in a text or an email if that works for you. I'm just
Yes.
getting ready to email.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
We're just double checking our tallies here to make sure we've got everything accurate. I'm guessing 2 to 3 minutes will be close to finished here. Okay, we've got all the votes and we've got the tallies, and I will announce the tally, and you guys can then make a motion on how you want to proceed from that point. Brock Abbey obviously withdrew from the process earlier this morning. So the votes are tallied in alphabetical order as follows: Patrick Hoffman, 1 vote; Amy Taylor Norton with 8 votes; Jacob Peterson with 7 votes; and Brad Sutton with 8 votes. So that is the tally. And I'll entertain a motion on how you would like to proceed. If you'd like to send the top 2 with unanimity, or all the 3 highest vote getters, as they are all a majority, it is your call and decision how to proceed at this juncture.
Justice Wall, I would move that we act unanimously to send the top 3 vote getters to the governor for her consideration.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion signify by raising your hand. All right, the motion carries, and that means we will be sending the 3 names to the governor: Amy Taylor Norton, Jacob Peterson, and Brad Sutton. And that concludes the process. Other than, does the commission want to designate a member to contact the nominees? I assume they may all still be watching and maybe already know, but sometimes folks will reach out to the applicants just to communicate the results. Given the pool is relatively small, I'm not suggesting that needs to happen, but just throw it out for your consideration.
Is there a member that wants to volunteer to each contact one? That way we just split it up. I would suggest Mr. Johnson contacts his partner. I would volunteer to contact Mr. Sutton, and
I can volunteer. I can volunteer to contact Ms. Norton.
I was gonna nominate you, Ms. Ritter.
Okay. Anybody else want to communicate with any of the other applicants? Or do we have it all covered? Sorry.
Yeah, no objection from my end. I'll be glad to do that.
Okay. Thank you. I just want to remind everyone to mail in their signed ballots, any notes that you took, and the nomination forms back to Marcia. And that way we will have the official record of the votes. Is there any additional business the commission wants to conduct today?
Just for my minute-taking purposes, Your Honor, Ms. Ritter, you will reach out to Ms. Norton, and then who was reaching out to Mr. Sutton?
I'll volunteer to do that since I was nominating the others.
Okay. Thank you. I just,
Would someone please volunteer to contact Mr. Hoffman, though, that courtesy?
I'll be happy to do that also.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other business that the commission needs to address before we adjourn?
I will complete minutes, Your Honor, and my practice in the past has been to send them as a draft to Ms. Johnson to make sure they're more or less accurate, which of course they weren't last time, so I'll try to get them in pretty good shape. And then typically, I know we won't meet for some time, but I'll send them out to the full commission, at least so everyone has them.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson.
Yes, sir.
All right. Is there a motion to adjourn today's meeting?
So moved.
I'll
Second?
I'll
All in
second.
favor? Aye. But honestly, thanks for everybody's hard work. You guys were so well informed because of the work you did. I appreciate it. Now our meeting has ended and is in conclusion at 1:14 p.m. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.